On this episode of China Uncensored, China's secret plan to take over the world. What's that, Shelley? It's not a secret. They just held a huge conference about it in Beijing. Dozens of world leaders were there. And we have footage? Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. It's the biggest global economic investment project in modern times. Bigger even than Newt Gingrich's proposed moon colony. Yeah, remember when that was the weirdest thing that happened in a presidential election? Anyway, this global economic investment project involves more than 60 countries and $1 trillion, which is more than the combined GDP of the smallest 97 nations, or the price of 28 moon colonies. And the whole thing is being led by the benevolent leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. It's called One Belt, One Road, or for short, OBOR. On Sunday, heads of state from 29 countries gathered at Beijing's Great Hall of the People for the Belt and Road Forum, or for short, BARF, which is how I feel right now. Especially because all of China's favorite political strongmen were there. Turkish president for life with sweeping new powers, Recep Erdogan. Filipino president and proud killer of drug suspects, Rodrigo Duterte. And Russian president and former KGB agent, Vladimir Putin. Just look at that swagger. Xi Jinping, I could take you and fight. Maybe not wife. So why is China trying to gather all these nations together? Well, as Xi Jinping explained on Monday, countries need to stick together like swan geese. Because, quote, swan geese are able to fly far and safely through winds and storms because they move in flocks and help each other as a team. Yes! Swan geese fly together! Swan geese fly together! Quack, quack! Honk, honk, honk! The point is, Xi is clearly expecting winds and storms and is looking for strength in numbers. So what is this trillion-dollar flying V-shaped globalization initiative with China at the helm? I'll let China's state-run English TV network, CGTN, explain.
China states that the Belt and Road Initiative is a systematic project, which should be built upon the principle of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits.
Could we go back to the swan geese part, because that was easier to understand? If only someone could explain One Belt, One Road in a simple way, like for children.
The belt connects the land, the road moves on the sea. The promise that they hold is joint prosperity.
Okay, I get the belt part. It's a metaphor for how Xi Jinping keeps his pants so high. But a road that moves on the sea? Wait a minute. Is this about those artificial islands in the South China Sea? Are they building moving roads now to connect them all? Anyway, state-run New China TV, please continue.
With our lines and our cables, diplomacy tables, sharing a world of prosperity. Oh, the future's coming now. The belt and road is how.
The Belt and Road is how? As in the Chinese word for good? Oh. Congratulations to Chinese state-run media for really upping their propaganda game. But maybe you're still not clear what One Belt, One Road actually is. Maybe one of the other children's videos by Chinese state-run media can explain.
Once upon a time, several routes led from China through Central Asia to Europe. It was called Silk Road. A few years ago, China's president Xi Jinping proposed making new routes like the old routes, but even bigger.
That's pretty much the gist of it. China wants to be the new world leader, not through actually colonizing the world with military force, which frankly never turns out well. Ask the British. No, China wants to rule with economic force. One Belt, One Road is about building giant infrastructure projects in Asia, Europe, and Africa. Mainly things like roads, rail lines, tunnels, bridges, seaports, and power plants. In theory, this will bring resources and power to China and money and goods to everyone. You know, joint prosperity. China is pledging around $1 trillion with tens of billions spent so far. According to China's Caixin magazine, 50 Chinese state-owned enterprises have invested in nearly 1,700 projects since Xi Jinping first announced the initiative in 2013. Those include 60 energy-related projects like gas pipelines from Russia and Kazakhstan to China. They also include high-speed train routes like the $4 billion rail line that will send trains from Ethiopia into Djibouti. In theory, China spending billions of dollars to invest in, the joint prosperity of dozens of nations is a good thing. If countries have real economic need, and China helps fulfill them, then China will be doing a great thing. But there are serious concerns that's not how it's going to go down. Let's take Laos, for example. Laos is a poor Southeast Asian country with a GDP of less than $14 billion. A Chinese joint venture is building a $6 billion railway project there. How can Laos afford such a huge investment, one that's projected to lose money for the first 11 years? No problem. Chinese banks will loan them the money. And if they can't pay it back, I guess Laos will just owe China a couple of favors, political favors like supporting the Chinese Communist Party in the UN, or economic favors like signing away their mineral rights to China. Or the Chinese Communist Party could just break their kneecaps. And Laos is just one example of how China's skein of geese might turn out to be more like a kettle of vultures. A lot of poor countries are concerned that the Chinese Communist Party wants to use these infrastructure projects to make it easier for Chinese companies to extract their natural resources and get rich at the expense of the locals. I mean, in theory, this whole joint prosperity slogan is supposed to mean a win-win for everyone. At least, that's what the happy multi-ethnic children would have you believe. But a lot of the infrastructure is designed to exploit oil and minerals or move goods, and not to create housing, schools, or access to clean drinking water. And that's especially an issue in poor African countries like Ethiopia and Djibouti. Corrupt local officials might get rich, but the general public, probably not. And there's another problem. China doesn't exactly have a great track record of successful infrastructure projects to begin with. This Oxford Review of Economic Policy paper analyzes 3 decades of Chinese investment data. It says, far from being an engine of economic growth, a typical infrastructure investment has destroyed economic value in China due to poor management of risks. So basically, extensive long-term data shows that the majority of Chinese infrastructure investments actually lose money. So 10 years from now, we might see a lot of busted kneecaps. There are other concerns that affect wealthier regions too, like the European Union. According to this article in The Guardian, the 28 member states of the EU decided not to support Beijing's draft statement about trade issued at the end of this past week's BARF summit. They really have got to work on those acronyms. The problem? Members wanted guarantees that projects would be economically and environmentally sustainable and subject to fair tendering processes. Well, I believe the Chinese leaders have pledged to treat these projects like they're in China's own backyard, so I'm sure they'll be environmentally sustainable. As for fair tendering processes, yeah, you're on your own. Look, I'm not saying it's wrong for China to look out for its own interests. Of course, every country wants to make sure they get an advantage out of working or investing in other countries. But One Belt, One Road is a way that the Communist Party can exploit poor countries for China's economic and political gain, all disguised under the idea of shared benefits and joint prosperity. It sounds good on paper, or in a song, or a bedtime story, but it's not so clear whether all these swan geese are really going to get off the ground. So what do you think about One Belt, One Road? Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.